So let's get on the same page here, because vegetable oils have a lot of names these days, right? But vegetable oils, seed oils, also known as polyunsaturated vegetable oils, PUFA or polyunsaturated fatty acids, edible oils, now the newest euphemism, plant oils, I think, meant to just confuse us, omega-6 oils, and then linoleic acid. Now, linoleic acid, if you don't know, is the 18-carbon omega-6 fat that is sort of exemplary. It's the primary fatty acid of these vegetable oils. All right, it accounts for about 80% of the fatty acids. All right, now here's the dreadful ones. All right, the high PUFA oils: soybean, corn, canola, cottonseed, grapeseed, sunflower, safflower, and rice bran. There, I've said it. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. These are the ones that are particularly dangerous. I'm sorry I don't have time. We have to move pretty quickly. All right, so this is from our paper recently, and this is vegetable oil consumption in the United States for essentially all of history. Notice, 1866 to about 1909, we're like 2 grams a day. And then it just takes off as we start getting soybean oil and all these other oils, right? And so by 2010, we're at 80 grams a day. Okay, so we went from 0 in 1865 for all the world and for essentially all of history, pretty much, to 80 grams a day. Now let me just say, this is an infinite increase in vegetable oil consumption. A lot of people talk about Tanya Blasberg's research where soybean oil went up 1,000-fold between 1909 to 1999, which indeed it did. But all this vegetable oil is an infinite increase. 80 grams a day, folks, is 720 calories worth. That's 32% of US caloric intake. A third of our diet is coming out of factories that make these oils. I can't tell you how dangerous this is. So 1900, 99% of our fats came from animal fat, lard, butter, beef tallow, and suet, essentially. But by 2005, 86% of added fats came from vegetable oils. And notice, the vegetable oils are still going up, right? Now, take a look at this. Here's where the dietary guidelines were introduced, right? 1980. And remember, our fat consumption was going down and our carb consumption is going up. So guess what? Our animal fat consumption is still trending down and our vegetable oil consumption still going up. Didn't just happen in the US. Here's developed countries, doubled in a period between 1963 and 2003. This is all around the world. Developed countries doubled. Developing countries tripled. Japan, for example, 4.5-fold. China, almost an 8-fold increase. And this ended 17 years ago, this data. Where are we today? The Asians are getting as sick as we are, right? Okay, so here's the dietary fats, essentially, that are added to our diet, right? Coconut oil, butter, palm, and lard. So the top 4, see all the red? That's all the saturated fat. That's what's healthy. Now, from cottonseed oil down, all that blue, that's all these vegetable oils. And all that blue is the omega-6 linoleic acid, just that. That's what that is right there. If you transplant yourself back to 1865, and for all of history, and for all the world, essentially, this is where all the fats came from. Butter, lard, and beef tallow at 3, 2, and 2% omega-6 fat. So in other words, here's where we are today, all that blue, all that omega-6, here's where we were in 1865. So what did this do to us? 1865, I calculated this. This is what our omega-6 consumption would have been in 1865 with 40% animal fat from traditionally raised animals, 2.2 grams per day, less than 1% of our calories. And then you can see this is increasing. By 1909, we're about 2% of our calories. 1999, we're at 7% of calories and 18 grams a day. And 2008, 11.8% of our calories and 29 grams a day. We went from 2.2 grams to 29 grams a day. You're going to see why this is so important, because we can't burn these for fuel properly. They're meant to be stored and used as signaling and structural molecules, particularly in the mitochondria, and they're not meant to be burned as fuel. So that's why we accumulate these. I want to make notice here, that's 2.2 grams is not yet published data. That will be in our next scientific paper. But This is a 12-fold increase in omega-6 in about 145 years, 12-fold. Okay, what did it do to us? Here's heart disease. And this is our published data as well. Look at the vegetable oil in black versus the heart disease deaths in red. Right? Everybody see a remarkable correlation? How about saturated fat in the purple versus heart disease? Anybody see any correlation there at all? Saturated fat practically flat for the whole last century, changed 5 grams, right? In fact, I would submit, if you see a correlation between saturated fat here and heart disease, you would also believe that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito are indeed twins. Okay, so there's a bunch of populations around the world that we know don't have heart disease, right? And I'm not even going to name all these, but they all have very similar things in common. So let's talk about 3 of them very quickly. The Maasai tribe of Kenya and Tanzania. Now, just so you know, this is where Kenya and Tanzania are in Eastern Africa. And I just want to say, this is what all these Maasai warriors, all the Maasai look like this. Lean, healthy, chiseled, fantastically healthy people, right? Well, anyway, George Mann and colleagues in 1970, around 1970, 1972, extensively studied them. Now, what do the Maasai eat? Milk, meat, and blood from the cattle they herd. They're pastoralists. The typical warrior drinks 3 to 5 quarts of raw, whole milk per day, and their milk has a lot of saturated fat. 3,000 calories a day. These guys only weigh about 128 pounds on average a piece. Their diet is 66% animal fat, 33 to 45% of that is saturated animal fat. It's about 17% carb, 1.7% omega-6 fat. Now that's the number I want you to pay attention to this whole time if you would. All right, well, what did George Mann find? They did 50 autopsies and they did, I think it was 350 EKGs, no heart disease, no heart attacks, except 1 possible silent MI in the entire group. Yet, our American Heart Association says no more than 5 to 6% saturated fat, right? So how do these guys get away with consuming up to 45% saturated fat? Well, American Heart Association would just say it's another paradox, right? Conventional medicine would say this: fools, don't you know animal fat would kill you? Right? They would say this: you must eat more healthy polyunsaturated oils like Americans. So this is an animal fat diet. This is polyunsaturated fat diet. Animal fat, polyunsaturated fat. How many times should I do this?